Chapter 3. The council hall was filled with anticipation as always. The 12 councillors were seated at computerized desks, 6 on the left and 6 on the right. There were 4 councilwomen for a change, which Ororo liked. The chamber reminded Ororo of the Leaders' Council in the X-Men, which she was a part of. The restored memories also made it known that there was a time when Ororo questioned her leadership skills. She had had several back-to-back disappointments based on her decisions, and they reflected poorly on her. Presently Ororo accepted that she was not perfect, that all the long-term plans and strategies might deviate. It was how they were dealt with that would determine the legacy of her tenure as leader of Wakanda. As for being a foreign-born person in charge of Wakanda, Ororo looked at Ramonda as an example. The first time Ororo came to the council meeting, Ramonda spoke to her in private and told her how to handle the understandable hostility that would be there. Ramonda was an outsider also. She was South African born, and T'Challa's father had married her after his first wife died. "The council meeting will begin," said T'Challa, as he sat next to Ororo. Then Ororo took over. "T'Challa and I have good news for the council and the rest of Wakanda. Our stolen memories were restored," said Ororo. "That's good news," said the majority of the council, and they clapped. But one councilwoman raised a point. She was about 50 and her hair was plaited. "What have you done to the ones who stole the memories?" she asked. "One was last seen drifting into space, and the other, Raven, she is currently being pursued," replied Ororo. "Will she be tried in court for her attack on the heads of state?" asked the councilwoman. "There will be no trial," said Ororo flatly. "Why not?" "The people deserve to see action taken against those who harm the state," said the councilwoman. "Based on the information that we have on Raven, it will not be prudent to run her through the law system. She has to be dealt with as a special case," said Ororo. "But with all due respect, shouldn't the council know the details of Raven, since we are the representatives of the people?" said the councilwoman. Ororo would not be baited into an argument. "Raven is a criminal to us and a protector to others. What she did to us was an attack on Wakanda, yes. Nevertheless, we have to keep an open mind as to how to treat with her for the benefit of the wider international community," said Ororo. "I see," said the councilwoman, and she dropped the matter. Chapter 4. Shuri cleaned up and got ready for the mission. It would be the most difficult one yet, since it would not require her physical abilities but her mental ones. All her thoughts had to be arranged in a particular manner. She had undergone a crash course in managing mental projections in the last 3 days. It was grueling stuff. All her rage issues, mother-daughter problems and love life had to be walled up for the mission. In doing so, she needed to deal with certain thoughts that were recently on her mind that pertained to her love life. That's why she confided in Ororo the details about someone who interested her. The one major problem with the guy was that he was from White Gorilla's sect. Apart from that, he was reasonably okay. The whole relationship, if it ever got off the ground, would be scandalous, since the Black Panther clan and the White Gorilla sect were enemies. Things were so bad between them that the White Gorillas refused to have a council member until a non-Black Panther was in charge of the country. "Now here I go again, messing things up," muttered Shuri. She packed her gear and headed for the private military airport in Wansa. From there she would start her world trek according to T'Challa and Ororo's plan. Chapter 5. Somewhere in the African nation Aranzi, one does not associate vacuum cleaning the office with the head of a lethal clandestine organization, but that was just what Raven did as the chief cook and washer. On hands and knees she cleaned underneath her office desk with the mini portable vacuum. She took a seat when she was done. She loosened her ponytail and allowed her flaming red hair to fall onto her shoulders. The map of Kunlun was on the desk in front of her. The job came to her because the Chinese Secret Service was debarred from touching the abbot. That was the type relationship she had with all the intelligence services of the major countries. The cases were usually in the supernatural and meta-human departments, although the occasional normal political job came through. Her organization was the off-the-reservation service that kept the agencies with their hands clean. She used contractors for jobs when necessary, and she personally did the bigger jobs. On the left of the desk was a computer, and it finally discovered the identity of the man who she encountered in Hong Kong. The file said that he was Abraham Hunter and was involved with the Vatican. He was classified as an adventurer. She made him a third-level priority and sent it out to the various agencies. Then Raven felt sick again. She sucked her teeth and cracked her fingers. She could suppress her emotions and memories, but one emotion constantly riled up from deep within her. It made her feel weak and scared because this was the one thing that brought down powerful people like politicians and ruined careers. She had seen the crash and burn scenarios so many times and had even been involved in the setup of one in her junior years as an operative by implanting the thought of cheating into the mind of a happily married politician. But before she dealt with the sickness, she had to check on T'Challa and Ororo. She was prepared for any countermeasure that they could attack her with. She used a supernatural portal that locked onto the souls of the T'Challa and Ororo so she could pinpoint where they were in the world. The portal was circular and rested on the next table in the office. The device was innocuous because it was a just brass band that stood on a stand. "Where are T'Challa and Ororo?" Raven asked. "In Wakanda," replied the portal. Raven had most of T'Challa and Ororo's memories taken away because the couple had learnt about hers. With her curiosity satisfied, Raven left to satisfy another need. She teleported to the hut in the mountains where she made the deal with Soberk. She peeped through the small openings in the boarded-up windows while she made a telepathic scan of the surroundings. There was no one around. Then she called Soberk from a transmitter. She sat down on the bed and wondered how long she would have to wait. In boredom her eyes wandered around the tidy hut. The bed was the only piece of furniture and there was no food in the cupboards. The hut smelt of old wood. A ball of fire appeared near the front door and Raven got up. Soberk appeared out of the flames. He had firmed up over the months and it sent Raven's pulse racing. Still, she had to ensure that it was him. They had a secret pattern to verify each other. Without a word being said, Raven rested her hands on his shoulders and scanned his mind. She saw the graveyard in the south of the country that held Soberk's ancestors. That meant it was him. She kissed him on the left cheek to say that it was okay. Chapter 6. When Raven returned to her base, she found 4 bulletins waiting for her. The bulletins dealt with the deaths of 4 men from the underworld. They were supernatural forgers. The bulletins came separately from 4 agencies. Then the shocker came. The killer had left a note behind that said that Raven committed the murders. The agencies wanted to know what was going on. "I want to know that too," said Raven. She ran a search of all the forgers in the world and found that one remained. He lived in Geneva. His name was Lucan. Raven quickly suited up in her combat gear. She consulted the portal on T'Challa and Ororo and they were still in Wakanda. Then again, T'Challa and Ororo would not go out and kill people just to get her. It was not their modus operandi. "Then there is someone new who wants to draw me out," said Raven. "But why forgers?" They were capable of replicating the powers of a few supernatural objects. Raven teleported to the forger's location. Luckily, forgers, because of their powers, were obese and rarely left their homes. Lucan lived in a high-wall 2-story house on Beowulf Avenue. Raven teleported to the front door and kicked it in. A security alarm blared and she sensed 2 minds inside the house. She scanned one of the minds and sensed fear while the next mind was blank. She heard footsteps that came from the staircase. A lean man hurried down with a submachine gun. He was probably the caretaker and bodyguard. His mind was the blank one. "Psi shields," said Raven as she shot the man in the shoulders and knees. She raced up the steps and pinpointed the next mind. Lucan was not far down the corridor and he was behind a closed door. Raven peeked into his mind and saw a handgun pointed at the other side of the door. She tried to reach into the mind to turn it off, but couldn't. She adjusted the teleporter and then kicked in the door. Lucan fired wildly while Raven teleported next to him and kicked the gun from his hand. Then she placed her gun to his head. He was about 400 pounds of nervousness. Sweat rested on his large brown eyebrows. The face was long and creamy white while freckles covered the rest of his body. He was bareback and sat in a bed. A movie was playing on the large screen television on the right side of the room. "Is your name Lucan?" asked Raven. "Yes," he replied. "Someone is after you and I'm here to protect you," said Raven. "No shit. Watch your language," said Raven. "Where is Christian?" "Downstairs." "He'll live," replied Raven. "Now stand up, we don't have much time." Lucan managed to get out of the bed. "Get some clothes on," said Raven, "and pack a bag." The alarming irritated Raven. "What is the deactivation code for the alarm?" she asked. 1644. Lucan moved slowly to the closet while Raven turned off the alarm at the panel that was next to the door. Suddenly Raven got jarring images from Lucan's mind. She glanced turned back to him. An electrical surge knocked Raven onto the ground. Chapter 7. Lucan came over Raven and kicked her gently. She did not move. Then Lucan stuck his fingers into his neck and he peeled off his face to reveal Shuri's head. Shuri pressed a small button on the neck and the rest of the body fell off. Shuri bent down and checked the mask on Raven's face. Then she cursed under her breath based on what she encountered. Then she called her brother over the Kimoyo. "I got someone but I can't verify that it is her because the person's suit is booby-trapped," said Shuri. "I'll take her to Greenridge nonetheless. I'll meet you there. You can verify her scent." Now came the trickiest part of the plan, getting Soberk's superhero team to kill Raven. Story: To Kill a Raven PT2 Chapter 1 Greenridge, Ghana. The bricked wall did little to muffle the sound of the well that was on the other side of it. The trickle of the water was musical as it flowed strongly and then weakly at close intervals. Mushrooms grew out of the few cracks in the 8-foot wall and they gave the grey concrete some color. That could not be said for the rest of the catacombs. They were dour chambers that held centuries of dust, save for one. Long ago, these catacombs provided a base for Wakandan operatives in this part of Africa. There was a sense of history that struck a visitor. That feeling was in Shuri as she dragged Raven to the prisoner's chair. How many other prisoners were carried blindfolded from the surface to the chambers to be interrogated or given instructions? Shuri strapped Raven in the chair that looked as though it came from the execution room in a prison. Shuri placed a computerized helmet on Raven's head that was meant to nullify the telepathy. The helmet resembled a cap that was silver and smooth. Wakanda's research and development program had supplied the device. Shuri checked the band around Raven's neck that locked the face mask down. There were inscriptions from a language unknown to Shuri on the band and the inscriptions changed when Shuri's fingers neared them. The other major item on Raven was supposedly a teleportation device that had little weight and fitted in Shuri's palm. It had a dull silver color. The controls were in another strange language. Shuri had no doubt that she had the right person. She could not prove it at the moment, but she felt correct in her bones. This was the person who had caused her family so much grief. Shuri held back the urge to slap Raven hard across the face to wake her. Word in the criminal underworld and political corridors was that Raven's reputation had quadrupled because of the incident with T'Challa and Ororo. The myth of Raven had been established. Who was she? What did she look like? Shuri was not sure about those answers at the time. T'Challa and Ororo had briefed her on their past dealings with Raven, still it was nothing substantial. The most that Shuri knew was that Raven had freed Soberk. Then Shuri thought about the difficulties in dismantling or carrying on Raven's organization. Finding a replacement as Storm wanted would be time-consuming, and stripping the organization's assets like T'Challa suggested seemed a waste. Where could the middle ground be? Shuri pondered. Frankly, Shuri was tired both mentally and physically. The forger's suit had been heavy and awkward. She had a new understanding for the obese. Then the mental projections were hard to keep up after the first hour of waiting for Raven. As usual, T'Challa had a firm grasp of hiding his thoughts from telepaths, and it was expected that Shuri would follow the example. She had forced herself to meet the expectation in the classes conducted in Wakanda's Psi Division. Speaking of Wakanda, she had to wonder if the country had become an afterthought to T'Challa and Ororo since they were outside on missions so often. As the former ruler of the nation, Shuri felt inclined to have a say in how it was being run. Sometimes Shuri had wondered what it was really like to lose your memories of your homeland, especially if you let it. She expected that T'Challa and Ororo would learn from the lesson and embrace Wakanda even more strongly. To walk with the people and understand the culture that was changing. One of the roles that Umba played was that he was like the couple's ears to the ground. He soaked up a lot of information when he mingled with the regular people and passed it on to T'Challa and Ororo. Now where would they get that valuable information from? Shuri sighed. There were a lot of variables in life, and change being the only constant. She looked at Raven. This was a woman who was brainwashed as a child and was unable to break free from it. So much that Raven deemed that she was correct to behave in the manner that she did. T'Challa said that he had offered an olive branch to Raven and she rejected it. Life was funny that way. Raven had brought her present fate on herself. There was a chamber waiting for Raven in the vault. She would remain there forever. A sudden flash of golden light came and went in the right corner of the catacomb. Shuri knew who it was. The iconic stance of T'Challa and Ororo appeared in the thin light. Then the couple stepped out of the dimness with a sense of satisfaction on their faces. The couple was dressed in black. Ororo had feathered earrings and a gold necklace. Her hair was in one and her beautiful eyes looked over Raven. T'Challa had the time-space sword on his back, and it made him look like a barbarian warrior from a pulp fiction novel. His brown eyes narrowed on Shuri and then the prisoner. How they have longed for this moment, thought Shuri, and she was delighted as well. T'Challa sniffed the air. It's Raven, he said grimly. What happened in the house? Asked Ororo. It went as expected. The life decoy robot got shot in the process, and I used an electromagnetic pulse on Raven before I brought her here, replied Shuri and continued. The booby trap is around her neck, so the mask cannot be taken off, and I presume that her teleporter is safeguarded in the same manner. And the forgers? Asked T'Challa. Wrapped up tight in Tuso. Look, we are running out of hiding places for these types of jobs, said Shuri. Point taken, said Ororo. And how are you emotionally? Did Raven get beyond the projections? Asked T'Challa. I feel fine for now, and I don't think that Raven knew that it was set up, replied Shuri. We can never tell, said Ororo as she inspected the band around Raven's neck. Can you break this? She asked T'Challa. It will take too much time, he replied. So we run the mission? Asked Shuri. Yes, answered T'Challa. We should use a robot to remove the mask, said Ororo. Then we will mark and tag her, said T'Challa. Chapter 2 Africa was a vast continent of various cultures, people, and ways of doing things. With those details in mind, Soberg broke up his superhero group into regions. The events in Washington, D.C. several months ago catapulted the entire group onto the world stage, and the core team soon dealt with global emergencies on a regular basis. Soberg incorporated live video feeds during missions to the world to entrench the team in the minds of people. The Ghanaian branch was a data gatherer and information relay operation that supplied the other branch teams. T'Challa and Ororo sent falsified information of a Hydra base in the central Sahara Desert. Like clockwork, the core team members were alerted via video cards. At the time, Soberg was at the United Nations building in New York for the Security Council meeting. Still, he followed the events on the low-key with his palm-held computer. The team members who were closets to Hydra's location numbered 5, and they were all flyers. Soberg liked to look at the response times of the various teams. On this mission, the team took 15 minutes to assemble, 10 minutes to formulate a plan of attack, and 10 minutes to fly to the target's location. The live feed to the international news channels started 5 minutes after the team arrived at the base. The base was camouflaged by a sandy-colored tent. Hydra agents were easily identifiable due to the octopus insignia on their clothes. Ordinary people viewed the organization as a remnant of the Cold War period, when world domination by a few was the craze. However, Hydra was known to a few others as a centuries-old vehicle for mayhem. When the team attacked, the Hydra agents outside of the base fled inside. The team broke in and met a red-haired woman in her late 20s along with 4 Hydra agents. Soberg's eyes narrowed when he saw the woman. Raven, he thought. There was a short skirmish and then an explosion on Hydra's side. Soberg jumped out of his seat, much to the astonishment of the Security Council members. He left the chamber without speaking and teleported to the Hydra base. There were barely any remains of the base when Soberg arrived. The team safely escaped the blast, and they were glad to see their leader. He ignored them and flew to the center of blast zone. She cannot be dead, thought Soberg. If so, then I'm truly alone. One of the team members went next to him and inquired what was wrong. Nothing, you did an excellent job, said Soberg. Chapter 3 A burning sensation on Raven's right cheek woke her. Then she felt the weight of the helmet on her head. She looked around and saw her captors. She smiled. The smell of hot metal caught her attention, and she saw the remnants of the robot next to the chair. It was clear to her what the purpose of the robot was for. She concluded that the burn on her face was caused by the combustion of the robot when it tampered with the magical band around her neck. First thing, said T'Challa. Thanos gave us our memories back. Raven's smile turned to a frown. Then she glanced around the rest of the room. The trickle of the well stood out. She tried to move her hands and feet without success. Then the pain on her cheek returned. What has happened to my face? Soberg will come after you, said Raven. You died yesterday, said T'Challa. As far as Soberg is concerned, it was his team that killed you, said Ororo. So this is the part where you seal me up like you did Soberg? Asked Raven. Yes, replied Shuri. Raven looked at Shuri intently. It was the first time that they had met, and it showed how T'Challa and Ororo outwitted her. She was so focused on the couple that she didn't see the use of Shuri in their plans. Raven assumed that she still had a few moments left before the double spell from the band would teleport her out of the room. You think that you're so smart, always a step ahead of the enemy, but I'm your equal, maybe even superior, said Raven. Then she vanished out of the chair and the helmet. The spell took her into the quarantine block of her headquarters. She immediately took off all her clothes and threw them into a disposal unit. Then she went into the electromagnetic pulse cube that zapped her body. Her heart got a twinge like a mild heart attack from the magnitude of the shock. Afterwards, Raven went into the next section, which was a chemical shower. She touched her right cheek and felt the torn flesh. What is that? She thought and turned to the mirrored left wall. They didn't. The Black Panther seal was etched into the cheek. She remembered the carved mark on Soberk's chest that he believed Storm had given him. Raven dashed out of the shower and went to the medical unit to find a healing laser. Probably she could repair the damage in time. But she spent 10 minutes trying to fix the problem with no avail. She took a seat and accepted the fact that the mark was permanent. She decided that her hair could conceal the mark if necessary. Then she remembered that Soberk believed that she was dead. He must be devastated, she thought. She got into a combat pants and jacket and then she teleported to the hut. She followed the routine and waited by the bed. Seconds later, a bewildered Soberk appeared. They went through the protocols quickly, and when Soberk was sure that it was Raven, he hugged her protectively. Raven felt the comfort from the hold and something else, which was love. It was not romantic love, but the kind that was between dear friends. She had not felt that way since she was a teen. What happened? Asked Soberk. T'Challa and Ororo used Shuri to get to me. The sister, said Soberk absent-mindedly. Are you hurt? Raven broke away from Soberk and she showed him the mark. Soberk touched it gently. Did they do it while you were awake? Soberk asked with guarded anger. I was unconscious and it's permanent. I will expose this sham to the world and bury T'Challa and Ororo with it, said Soberk. What do you mean? How exactly did they fake my death? It was on international television. The whole world has seen it. There was a Hydra base in the Sahara. My team went there and you appeared, then there was an explosion. They went through all that trouble because they knew that you would go to them if I disappeared, said Raven. Clever bastards, said Soberk. Leave them, said Raven. He held her face tenderly. Search my mind. Feel the pain that I went through last night having believed that you were gone. Then you'll understand my need to punish T'Challa and Ororo, said Soberk. I can read the pain in your eyes, said Raven. They got very close on this occasion, fine, but we cannot react on impulse. I cannot promise that I will not do anything. Raven stroked the side of his face. I hope that you don't. I'll handle everything. I have to go now, said Raven. Wait. How will I know if something bad happens to you on one of your missions? You just won't. They kissed warmly and she departed. She returned to the headquarters with the intention of informing the agencies that she was still alive. Chapter 4. Raven had no idea how it happened. There was a pinch to her neck and then she slumped to her knees. She was aware of her surroundings, but her body was paralyzed. Two people landed from the ceiling next to her. They were T'Challa and Ororo. We didn't finish our conversation, said T'Challa, and he manhandled her left arm. He lifted her body and placed her in the chair that Ororo brought from the desk. How? Raven asked herself. Twice in the past we underestimated you. We weren't going to make the mistake a third time, said Ororo. Then Ororo went to the computer on the desk. The thing is that we did not know where you came from and your connection to Soberk. Then it dawned on us that the only way you would have known Soberk intimately was if you were on the team from your organization that dealt with him, said Ororo, and she typed on the keyboard. And the leader of the team was of course Callus. Raven panicked as Ororo typed the name into the computer's password protection. A delighted look came on Ororo's face. I now have access to your whole organization, said Ororo triumphantly. T'Challa leaned against the desk, folded his arms and stared at Raven. By the way, said T'Challa, the reason that your telepathy and other body functions aren't working is due to a serum we specially blended for you. The secret to a good con is to make the opponent believe that they are in control of the situation. Isn't that what you did to us? Asked Ororo. Only thing is that we were playing it with you, which returns us right back to what we are going to do with you. Then Ororo pocketed the map to Kunlun that was on the desk. It is only fair that we state your punishment even though you didn't afford the same treatment to us, said T'Challa. You will be frozen alive and kept in hibernation. Don't worry, we will handle the organization's business from here on, said Ororo. Any questions? Asked T'Challa. Raven's vision blurred and she passed out. Chapter 5 Ororo explored the headquarters while T'Challa had taken Raven back to Wakanda. The couple had tracked Raven through the Black Panther mark. Then they hid their thoughts to avoid Raven's telepathy. T'Challa used his mental skills to mask his mind while Ororo used a ring of electrical current around her head. Ororo had sensed the teleportation of the incoming Raven and the couple went to the ceiling to lay a trap. Ororo was concerned about where Raven had returned from. Possibly she contacted Sobek, thought Ororo. She greedily went through the files on the computer that were accessible. She searched for items on T'Challa and herself. She came across biographies and a write-up on Wakanda that interested her. Raven had deemed that it was better to have T'Challa and Ororo as the heads of Wakanda because of their open objectives than for someone else from within the country that would be more secretive and harder to track and manipulate. Oh, said Ororo. There was another detail. A current mission file on the couple and Ororo opened it. The file contained a log of the couple's movements outside of Wakanda for the last months. The means of the tracking was shown in a small picture. Where have I seen that before? Ororo asked aloud. Then she glanced at the next table and saw the soul tracking instrument. She pointed a finger at it and concentrated. A bolt of lightning left her finger and knocked the instrument over. She felt happy that T'Challa and Ororo were justified in thinking that Raven monitored them. Then Ororo scanned the files for a prize that was bigger than Raven and Sobek put together. Then she found it, the Balthazar file. It was truly like opening a door and not knowing what to expect. Ororo read the file and was intrigued. Balthazar was formerly the god Makli who volunteered out of a council of gods to be transformed by the five lights into a being that would guard against the cosmic serpent. Balthazar was made from the very fabric of existence and formed a ring around the earth. Sobek learned of Balthazar's existence through his clan and divided him into several pieces, with the main piece being the one that resided in Aranzi. That's all well and good, but what are his weaknesses? Asked Ororo as she read further and found nothing to answer her question. Then she went to Sobek's file. It stated basically that Sobek followed a Machiavellian philosophy and he was useful in influencing global political changes. Another tidbit was that Sobek was actively trying to recreate his clan. That might mean trouble, said Ororo, since hers and T'Challa's next objective was to take down Sobek. Ororo looked for a diagram or layout of the headquarters. She remembered that Wakanda's spy satellites had taken photos of several potential land and buildings that Raven may have operated from. Ororo anticipated that she was in one of those locations. However, she was not. A diagram of the headquarters showed that it was situated underneath a scrapyard. She became concerned that Balthazar may appear because he swore to protect Raven once she was in Aranzi. She called T'Challa and told him the situation. Then he came for her. Before she left, Ororo took photos on her Kimoyo of the information on Raven's computer, since she believed that Raven's computer had a barrier to downloading data. Once they had teleported back to Wakanda, Ororo told T'Challa what she had learnt. "Do you still want to find someone to run the operation?" asked T'Challa. "Yes," replied Ororo. My first choice was Nicholas Fury. Also, Raven's operation is far greater in scope than we estimated. She has 9 missions currently running. Dismantling everything does not seem prudent. Ororo continued, and it appears Secret Service agencies from around the world supplied Raven with work. I thought that it was only America, said T'Challa. We really need to sit and go over this again. Indeed, said Ororo. Do you want to bring Shuri into this? Yes. On another note, none of Soberg's team members were injured in the operation, said T'Challa. Thank God for that, said Ororo.